Hello.
Good to see you. Are you live since yesterday?
I'm fixing it.
You're fixing the bridge. It's so good to have you back in Moscow. It's been so many years you've been supporting Russia and coming to Russia. And this year it's a special occasion because you decided to support the restoration of the costume for the Bolshoi.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wanted to know why did you decide to do that? Because today Russia it's a little bit isolated from the rest of the world. And for us, it's a big support and big statement for the Russian culture and for the Russian customers to have you here physically and to do this kind of project, regardless the whole thing against Russia.
Listen, it's very, very, very simple. I've come back and forth to Russia for now, literally 15 years, and especially in Moscow. And I love Moscow, as you know. You make part of Moscow and my Moscow scene. Anyway, to go back to one thing which I've been doing for the Bolshoi, you have to understand that being a designer, you have influences coming from images that you have, icons that you can think of, situation, people, etc. And so all of this is contained in the idea of the Bolshoi. If you've never been to the Bolshoi, you have heard about the Bolshoi anyway, and I don't think there is one more iconic place talking of dance. But it's not only talking of dance, it's talking of situation, of divas, of people who are difficult, there is a fight, and there is a death in the Bolshoi, there's been a love story, it's all around that. So the Bolshoi is carrying a lot of values, but the first value that it carries the Bolshoi is the excellence of art into the Russian culture, the importance of different forms of art into the Russian culture, which makes the Russian culture so important, so rich, and so various, and so different from a lot of different other countries. So in regard of that, if you ask me why the Bolshoi, I would tell you there is not a place that I'm thinking which is definitely more speaking about the dance. I was born and I live in Paris, and we have a beautiful opera. But this opera has been done, it's Opéra Garnier, so now it's the Palais of the Dance, but it was built first for opera. Opera don't need such a big space. The first thing which struck me when I first went to the Bolshoi is the size of it. You know, there is the pharaonic side of things, but it is also exactly like the pyramids in a way. It is a temple to beauty, a temple to dance, but the stage is huge, and there is no photogeny to it. You know, there is not a thing. Even if you put someone next to it, it's not. You can see, you can understand, you can perceive this on a picture. It's impossible. So you just have to go to the Bolshoi. But the quality of what you see, the quality of the dance that you are going to see, but it's also, I would say, the Bolshoi, I compare the Bolshoi to the Vatican. You know, you have Moscow, and inside Moscow, you have the Bolshoi. The Bolshoi is a city in a bigger city. You have life, a world complete, people working. So I've been privileged enough to be able to have a big visit of the Bolshoi, so not only also seeing performances, but behind the scene. So the stage, above the stage, the second stage, but also all the atelier. And thinking of that, I was also thinking of my own story. It's now, today, it's 27 years that I started my company designing shoes. But a few years back, I had 20 years behind me, and so I already had some archives. So I was thinking of my own archive, which are so small and such a little thing. And but I was already thinking, I am already protecting myself, some of my archives. So when I came to the Bolshoi and I went to the atelier where I saw people keeping on working on some part of the archives, but also some part of the archives are protected and some part of the archive is still a work in progress because it's another tenor, so you have to change to fix the outfit, but you're keeping outfit for other. So I thought that's a nice way to make things, artisanship, living again and again and again. So because of that, when one of the directors spoke of the archives and I looked at the archive, I thought that it was definitely making sense to help the memory of the most important place for ballet in the world. So I've been fortunate to be able to see a part of the archives, and for that reason also to be able to help the Bolshoi to restore some of the things, because it's more than 100 years of costume, and some things need that restoration. So it makes sense for me to protect beauty.
That's a very interesting explanation. So if we continue the beauty subject, and if I bring it back to the Russian woman, do you find Russian women different from the women in the world, from the rest of the women in the world, in the way they style, in the wear? Because I think that in Russia, the women, they really like the high heels. And I think in one of a few countries in the world who naturally want to wear only high heels. We're going to talk about the sneakers later, and the craziness about the sneakers and the new generation styles. But I can't miss away the subject about the high heels. You started business 27 years ago. We've been working in Russia for the last 17 years. Mm-hmm. And you probably agree with that. We see that mostly high heels is a #1 sale. And they want to higher and higher. And even myself, I feel like when I'm in a higher heels, I feel more confident. Mm-hmm. I feel more sure. And if I have any important meetings, I will never go flat. I want to put my high heels because it makes me feel so much confident. Do you think that Russian women are, why do you think they need the high heels? It's a matter of taste, it's a character?
It's a lot of things. High heels are important to Russian women because I think that Russian women have always had this strong identity, feminine identity. So they have a sense of style, they have a sense of fashion, but they also have a sense of their own simple inner femininity. And in that thing, high heels is definitely a tool of confidence, for some people, power, but also posture. And if you look at women in the street, even, for instance, in Russia, women look beautiful, but also they know how to walk. There is this thing. So,
in high heels. Yeah.
In high heels, and they know how to walk in general. There is this thing and the high heel is actually definitely helping that posture and to feel your body. So it's just attached to the foot, but it's definitely embracing the entire body. And I think that actually Russian women are pretty confident. So everything which is on the side of feeling confidence or feeling helped in their own confidence is a security for themselves. And they like it, and there is nothing wrong with that.
We've done the shoe signing, I think, first time about 12 years ago. And yesterday it was a shoe signing here in a new store. Do you think they changed since the last 12 years? Did you find the customers different, the way they look, what they buy?
If I have to try to see a difference between the Russian woman like yesterday compared to the Russian woman that I first started to approach in Moscow, in Russia, 15 years ago, I would see one big difference actually. Is Russian woman has always been quite feminine and knowing how to dress, dressing herself, etc. The big difference to me is that there always been something of Russian woman which was the skin, which, Russian women have this glowing skin. 15 years ago, you would see women dressed with a lot of makeup. Now, the difference, I have the feeling, is that women are keeping on being dressed. They have the eyes made, but they don't put so much makeup.
It's more natural.
So there is something where what is very enhanced is the eyes and the lip, but the skin remains beautiful, but without anything on the skin. That's the difference. I would remember seeing women, beautiful, even very young women, with a lot of foundation on the face. So you couldn't even say the age.
It's a lot of foundation on the face.
But now it's different. The eyes remain really well done, and the lips also. But the rest, the skin, keeps this luminescence that you always had, you Russian women, but that you would sort of, for whatever reason, protect with a big base of makeup. This disappeared. That's the only big difference, I would say.
So we should tell Russian women over there that keep natural your skin and make it glowing. I wanted to ask you about the sneakers. I know that actually the sneakers that we have in the stores here has been very successful, and I want you to know that you are considered, and you are physically, the most successful shoe designer among the Russian women. We have a lot of contests with the clients, and we do a lot of researches like that. So when it's a question of what is your famous and the favorite designer, number one has been Kристиан Лубутен for the last 17 years. But with a new generation, with a new, you know, all this approach and the social media, the sneakers, do you feel that the sneakers is like, you know, taking this woman, converting the woman in a different woman? Or it will be always, you know, two-part, night and day? How do you feel this, the whole thing about the sneakers?
You know, I have a very simple approach talking of sneakers. Sneakers have been existing. Sneakers will exist. There is a part of the sneakers which has become more important in terms of trends, but it will never remove the heels. So it's the great thing of being a woman in most of country is that you have now, due to social media, which has empowered every type of personality, you also have now the possibility to change 3 times a day if you want. So you can go on the heels and you're excited on your heels, and then you go on a pair of sneakers, on a pair of flat shoes. You don't have to be always the same woman, the same character, or the same silhouette. And the great thing now in fashion is that I don't think that people are completely attached to only one type of look for themselves. So they can go from one thing to one thing. So the sneakers, it's interesting because in the language of fashion, you need storytelling. So I've been hearing, the first shoes that I did was a flat shoes, 27 years ago. I've always had flat shoes, always had high heels, always had slides, mules,
and now you have sneakers.
And boots.
And they're successful.
I started 10 years ago sneakers for men. And my company has more women in my company in Paris than so actually I started sneakers for women for a very simple reason. Girls in the company say, hey, what about us? We want those sneakers. They wanted some sneakers of the men collection, and they also wanted, every single girl in the office wanted some loafers. So I ended up doing several different loafers, which were men loafers, transformed into women loafers because they wanted it, and then sneakers because they wanted it. And so all this to say that all this work can sort of work together, and you can go from one to another. That's really not a problem. But I have still to say, it's a funny thing because sneakers for storytelling has been considered like, now women want to feel comfortable. That's why we want sneakers, and the world is going to go around sneakers. First of all, I would not say that sneakers are the most comfortable shoes in the world, you know. And second of all, it's just a storytelling. I tell you, my sister came to see me in Portugal. She arrived, she was driving her car. She's moving from her car, and I see her coming barefoot. I said, be careful because there's a gravel on the floor. I said, you arrived barefoot? She said, no, but I couldn't drive with my shoes. And then what does she put on? A pair of sneakers. I said, is that the shoes? She says, yes, it's so uncomfortable, you can't even drive with it. Sneakers. So, you know, there is this idea that sneakers, suddenly it's a revolution of sneakers because it's more comfortable. No, it's trendy.
Yeah,
it's a different
fashion.
thing. It's
of
a
course,
fashion
I
thing.
agree with you.
And
I think
good
it's a
for
totally
it.
fashion. You know, on the personal note, if you would have a chance to change anything in your life, going backward, would you change something?
Yes, my haircut.
Your haircut. It's perfect. Okay, that's an interesting approach. But otherwise,
What, if I had to change something?
if you would have to change something, yeah, would you, besides the haircut, which is a great, but otherwise, in your life, the place you're living, the profession, what you're doing, would you be a Kристиан Лубутен?
You know, I think that probably if people want to change something, they want to improve what's been done to what's been done to you. But frankly, I don't see what I would change. I like the surprise in life. You know, life is bringing you surprises. So to change things, it means that you haven't been sort of fulfilled with what happened to you. And I cannot complain of what happened to me. My adventure started by designing shoes as a child, and it was a bit of a dream. So I didn't think that it would ever become my reality. And so my dream has become a reality. So I keep on living a reality which is a bit like a dream. So I cannot change anything about that. And if I had to change something, no. You know what I would want? If I had really to change something, I would have wanted, I often think I would have wanted free childhood.
Free childhood?
Free childhood in 3 different places. I was born and raised in Paris, and I experienced what it is to be born and raised in Paris and what it gives you as a personality. But I would have loved to be able to have 3 different childhood.
Which countries would you choose?
I would also have loved to be born by the sea. I don't know where exactly, not in a small island. It could be like Rio, for instance, you know. I would have loved to have actually a childhood where I would play sport, surf. I would have loved to have a childhood in a place like Rio. A city, but with the sea. And so that's a second childhood that I would have loved. And maybe a third childhood, probably, I would say, in India. Because I always loved India, and I would quite like the idea of having a childhood in a place like India, which is actually India or Bhutan, sort of in Asia, but with a lot of serenity and religiosity into your everyday thing. Not in a big city in India.
In a smaller city.
In a smaller city, but in a place very serene, but with a lot of God playing fairy tales with you.
Yeah, it's very spiritual.
Exactly, in a spiritual place. Mm-hmm.
You know, 6 months ago, we decided to start a project to support women. Hopefully one day it can become an international thing, meaning that we created a content that every single woman in Russia can share their experience. We started to shoot successful ladies, successful women in Russia who has been facing different periods in their life. Some of them were having a very serious problems with their marriage. They've been abused by the marriage. Some of them were, had to face a lot of issues with their businesses. So it's a story about the self-made woman. And I decided, I know it on myself, I have a very difficult periods in my life. And I found that, when you have people advising you or, giving you a right support, or sometimes just with a word, it can make you, move forward, right. and just, sometimes it just help you, with a one word or one advice. And because we represent a lot of women in Russia through the work we do, we decided to create these initiatives. And it's been very successful because a lot of women started to share their experience, mm-hmm. and we have a lot of feedback from the women who listening and watching this experience, that it helps them to go forward. What do you think? Is that today? Obviously, it's I don't want to call it a fashion thing to talk about women leadership and internship, but do you think it's a trend as well as a trend with the sneakers? Because it's been quiet before, and suddenly the world, started to talk about it so much everywhere. It started more or less in US, and it's getting more and more popular.
I think that there is a type of solidarity between women, which is not only reaching women, but which is a solidarity between women for women, which is a very good thing. And the fact is, I truly believe in the power of communication. So when I say communication, it means that people should be able to communicate between. When you have a problem with someone, you should be able to express yourself, and then in general, the problem get dissolved or get resolved. And so if you manage to communicate, there is much less problem, there will be much less war. Wars are coming from the lack of communication between people, between human beings. So everything which is basically brought to bring people together, bring women, a community of women together, is a very good thing, because I think that there is, you can see it in discussion, in negotiation, in diplomacy, women have those different characters and they are more peaceful. And I really think that if women were, when women are in charge, often there is more peace. So everything which is giving the possibility to women to see that they belong to this community of people who can definitely do the world better for themselves, but also is a reality. And so I would say that if it starts by a trend, it's perfectly okay, as long as it doesn't remain a trend, but it becomes a reality. And I think that it is a reality just the way now, you know, the idea of inclusiveness has become an important topic. That's the same thing. I would carry those two messages: inclusiveness, you know, the different race of people having to be put together. It's just like, you know, women together. It's two messages which come back to the same. It's how people bring themselves, communicate themselves, and a lot of things would be resolved immediately.
That would be your advice to the woman who has concerns or doubts?
I think that it's not an advice that I would give to women only. It's an advice that I would give to anyone. You know, when you have a problem, communicate. If you feel bad, or if you feel anything from being abused, or feeling bad, or feeling even useless, speak about it. You know, it's all this thing. Yeah. Share. I think that sharing is not only going in the sense of generosity, but also in the sense of just positivity for you and for the other. And I do see that, you know, often women are better at communicating between themselves.
Do you think they're less cruel than men?
I would say that women, yes. I would say that women, it's, you know, I was born with 3 older sisters, and it was very funny because my 3 sisters are 12, 14, and 16 years older. So sometimes with my mother, they were speaking of what they've been doing, and there is this famous book, a famous French book called Le Sexe Faible, The Weak Sex. So it's about women. And so it's almost like a play on words, because it says that women is the weak sex. And but literally everybody knows that women are not weak. You know, and I would always remember my sister saying, so I did this and I did that. You know, le sexe faible, you know, the weak sex, laughing. Like, how can anyone still believe that women are the weak sex? You know, women are totally powerful, and that's the only thing which is, for me, a weird thing with, like, forcing feminism, is that I think that naturally I always thought that women were really powerful and were not weak in any way. So that's a very natural state for me of the reality of women. But again, to go back to my sisters, I was always laughing seeing them pretending, you know, for whatever it was good for them, that they were weak. But there was nothing weak in my sisters, just as there is nothing weak into the mentality of women in general.
What's your definition of a happiness?
The definition of happiness is embracing who you are with people you love, but embracing who you are with everyone around also. Happiness is something that needs to be shared, because it's otherwise it's called contentment. So happiness is really making part of the world in the best way.
You making all the women in the world happy. Are you happy yourself?
I'm quite a happy person.
Are you a happy person?
Are you happy yourself?
I am a very happy person, especially having you as my friend, as a partner. Thank you so much for your time. You have to promise that you will be coming to Russia frequently.
I promise. Спасибо.
Thank you so much.